The sun blazed fiercely over the vast red plains of Nambala as Salima arrived in her husband's village, her heart swelling with both hope and fear. The road behind her was long and dusty, lined with acacia trees that whispered in the wind as if blessing her journey. The air was heavy with the scent of wild marula fruit and fresh earth after dawn. Her husband, Cato, stood tall at the compound's entrance, his face filled with quiet pride as he welcomed her home. But beside him stood his mother, Mama Cato, her arms folded across her chest, her expression colder than the shadow beneath the baobab tree. As the drums from distant huts echoed through the hills, Salima bowed respectfully and offered her mother-in-law a calabash of palm wine. "May our homes be joined in peace," she said softly. But Mama Cato only frowned. "A new broom may sweep clean," she muttered, "but it cannot reach every corner." From that moment, Salima knew her road would not be smooth. Still, she tried with all her heart. Each morning before the rooster's first cry, she woke to fetch water from the far-off well, balancing clay pots on her head as the sun's first light painted the world gold. She swept the courtyard until it glowed like polished copper and cooked millet porridge, rich with honey and spice. She even learned the old songs the village women sang while pounding grain. But no matter how hard she tried, Mama Cato found fault in everything. "You waste firewood," she complained. "You stir too slowly." When Salima mended her torn mat, the old woman said, "You tie knots like a child." Still, Salima smiled through the sting, remembering her mother's words before she left home. "In every fire, my daughter, find a way to dance, for flames cannot burn a heart that shines." The village women watched quietly, whispering of the young bride's patience. Even the children, who played in the dusty streets, saw her kindness and offered her wildflowers as gifts. But Cato, torn between love and duty, began to listen to his mother's bitter words. "Your wife disrespects me," Mama Cato told him. "She does not serve with love. She brings misfortune." Those words, like poison, sank deep into his heart until his laughter with Salima grew rare. At night, when the crickets sang and the moon turned the world silver, Salima sat alone beside the fire, whispering prayers to her ancestors. "Give me strength," she said, "to face the storm without losing my light." And though her heart ached, she never stopped giving. She washed Mama Cato's clothes, gathered herbs for her healing tea, and served her food with both hands as a sign of respect. Yet still, gratitude never came. What Salima did not know was that the ancestors were watching from the hills, unseen and silent. They saw her patience, her pain, her love, and her endurance. And as the winds rustled through the baobab trees that night, it was said, the spirits whispered, "The one who plants kindness in dry earth shall one day harvest peace." Days in Nambala passed like the slow turning of the sun, each one carrying both dust and silence. Salima's feet grew used to the rhythm of work, the long walks to the river at dawn, the pounding of millet beneath her mortar, the smoke curling above her cooking fire. Yet her heart remained heavy, weighed down not by labor, but by the coldness that followed her like a shadow. Mama Cato's words pierced like thorns. "You walk too softly, as if afraid to live," she said one morning. "Do you think the ancestors favor cowards?" Salima only bowed her head and continued washing the clothes. When neighbors visited, Mama Cato would raise her voice so all could hear. She pretends to be humble, she'd say, but humility is not silence, it's deceit. Laughter would follow, sharp and cruel, and Salima's cheeks would burn though she said nothing. Still, she kept serving, kept smiling, her soul whispering that love was stronger than hate. Each day before sunrise, she placed a bowl of clean water by her mother-in-law's mat, ground fresh herbs for her tea, and left wildflowers by her doorway. The neighbors shook their heads and said, "This girl's patience is beyond mortal strength." The old healer, MZ, watched her one afternoon as she carried firewood on her head and said quietly, "Child, kindness is a drum, beat it long enough, and even the deaf will hear." His words stayed with her like a song, and for a moment Salima believed that one day Mama Kaito's heart might soften, but the old woman's bitterness only deepened. She told Kaito that his wife was lazy, that she disrespected the family, that she wasted food. Kaito, whose love had once burned bright, began to turn cold, his trust crumbling like dry clay. "Do not believe every whisper," Salima pleaded gently, but he would not meet her eyes. At night she sat alone by the fire, stirring a pot of stew that had lost its taste, her reflection shimmering in the oil like a ghost. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "The truth will bloom," she whispered to the flames, "even in dry soil." As the moon rose above the acacia trees, she lifted her gaze to the sky and spoke to her ancestors. "If this is the path you chose for me, let me walk it with grace. Let me not repay cruelty with anger, but with peace." And though her heart trembled, a strange calm filled her. In the days that followed, Salima began to hum softly while she worked old village melodies her mother had taught her. The neighbors began to notice that wherever she went, the air seemed lighter. The children followed her laughter, and even the birds seemed to perch closer when she sang. But Mama Kato's jealousy twisted her deeper into bitterness. She could not stand to see peace blooming in the girl she despised. Kindness cannot change a serpent, she told herself, though deep down her spirit was beginning to tire. Salima continued her silent fight, not with anger, but with endurance, a quiet defiance that even the ancestors admired. For in the land of Nambala, it was said that the strongest warriors were not those who fought with spears, but those who fought with the heart. When the dry season came to an end and the rains whispered across the hills of Nambala, the village prepared for the great festival of the ancestors, a sacred time when every family offered food to the spirits of those who had walked before them. It was said that the ancestors could bless a household with good harvests or curse it with famine, depending on the purity of the offering. Salima, though weary from months of silent endurance, felt a spark of hope. Perhaps, she thought, if I serve the ancestors with love, they will bring peace to this home. She rose before dawn, her fingers nimble as she ground millet and mixed it with sweet honey and crushed baobab fruit, her late mother's ancient recipe. As she cooked, she whispered blessings over the pot, calling upon the spirits for harmony. But in the shadows of the hut, Mama Kato watched with narrowed eyes. Jealousy burned inside her like wildfire. "She wants to make me look small before the village," she muttered bitterly. When Salima left to fetch banana leaves for wrapping the offering, the old woman leaned over the pot and slipped in a handful of bitter herbs. "Let's see if your ancestors enjoy this sweetness," she hissed. When the day of the festival arrived, the entire village gathered beneath the sacred tree, a massive baobab, whose roots were said to touch the bones of the first people. Drums echoed through the air, and colorful garments fluttered like butterflies in the breeze. The women carried their dishes forward, one by one, bowing before the elders, who placed each offering before the tree. When Salima approached, her head bowed and her eyes soft with humility, the villagers whispered in awe. Even the chief's wife murmured, "She glows with the peace of the ancestors." Mama Cato stood behind her, her heart drumming with fear and envy. When Salima's dish was set before the sacred tree, a strong wind rose suddenly, swirling red dust into the air. The leaves shimmered in gold light, and the fire beside the elders blazed higher. Mzodod, the old healer, raised his hands and said in a trembling voice, "The ancestors have spoken. This offering carries the purity of a heart without bitterness." A murmur spread through the crowd, and all eyes turned to Salima. Mama Cato's jaw tightened as shame crawled through her chest. She looked at the dish and saw no bitterness in it, only sweetness, as though the herbs she had hidden had vanished. The villagers began to praise Salima, saying her kindness had pleased even the spirits. "She will bring rain to her husband's fields," said one elder. "The ancestors smile upon her soul," said another. That night, the first rain of the season fell over Nambala, soft, steady, and full of life. The millet fields glistened under the moonlight, and the scent of wet earth filled the air. But inside the house, Mama Cato could not sleep. Her pride, once her armor, now felt like a chain around her heart. She stared at the flickering fire and whispered, "Why do the spirits favor her and not me?" In that quiet hour, even she felt the faint stirrings of guilt, though her stubbornness refused to yield. Salima, unaware of the old woman's torment, knelt by her mat and prayed softly, "Thank you, ancestors, for seeing truth where lies tried to grow." Outside, the rain whispered over the rooftops like forgiveness waiting to be born. Weeks after the festival of the ancestors, peace seemed to return to Nambala. But inside Mama Cato's heart, unease grew like a storm cloud that refused to move. Her bitterness had turned heavy, pressing on her chest like a stone. Then, one morning, as the sun climbed slowly over the hills, she fell ill. Her strength faded, her laughter vanished, and her once loud voice became no louder than a whisper. The villagers said it was the hand of the ancestors, that jealousy and pride had poisoned her spirit. Salima, upon hearing of her illness, felt her heart twist in pity. Though she had been humiliated, though her kindness had been thrown away like dust, she could not turn her back on the woman who had wronged her. "She is still my mother," Salima whispered, tying her scarf and hurrying to the old woman's hut. Inside, the air was thick with smoke from burnt herbs, and Mama Cato lay weakly on her mat, her body trembling. "Why have you come?" the old woman croaked. "I have no need for your pity." Salima knelt beside her, gently touching her forehead with a damp cloth. "It is not pity, Mama," she said softly. "It is love." For days, Salima nursed her mother-in-law with patience that astonished the villagers. She prepared healing teas from lemongrass and wild honey, massaged her tired legs, and sang softly through the night. The same hands that had once been bruised by hard labor now carried the weight of forgiveness. The neighbors whispered outside the hut, amazed by her heart. "She cares for the one who hurt her," they said. "Her spirit shines brighter than fire." As the days passed, Mama Cato's bitterness began to melt like wax under the sun. She watched as Salima worked quietly, washing her clothes, feeding her soup, and humming the lullabies that once echoed in the village during harvest season. One evening, as the orange sun dipped below the horizon, Mama Kato wept for the first time in years. "Why are you kind to me?" she whispered weakly. "After all I've done." Salima smiled gently. "Because hatred cannot heal, Mama. Only love can." Those words pierced deeper than any knife, and for the first time, the old woman felt peace enter her chest. The following morning, when Cato returned from the fields and stepped into the hut, he froze. There before him was the sight of his wife feeding his mother gently with a wooden spoon, the fire casting golden light across their faces. Tears filled his eyes as guilt gripped his heart, guilt for the silence he had given his wife, for believing his mother's lies, for letting love fade beneath pride. "Salima," he whispered, voice shaking, "I have been blind." She looked up at him with eyes that held neither anger nor pride, only calm forgiveness. "Love is never blind, Cato," she said softly. "It only waits for us to see again." That night, Mama Cato slept soundly for the first time in months, and the winds that rustled through the baobab leaves carried whispers of the ancestors' joy. They said, "Where kindness lives, curses cannot dwell." And from that day forward, though her body remained weak, Mama Cato's heart began to heal, not through medicine, but through the pure grace of a woman she once called unworthy. As Mama Cato's strength slowly returned, the story of her illness and Salima's compassion spread through Numbala like the morning light that chases away the night. The villagers had seen many wives and mothers-in-law clash before, but none had witnessed a heart so pure that it turned cruelty into forgiveness. Day after day, they saw Salima walk through the market, her calm smile shining brighter than the beads around her neck, while Mama Cato sat beneath the baobab tree, her eyes following the girl she once despised with quiet reverence. The whispers that once mocked Salima now carried her name with respect. "The spirits dwell in that woman's heart," said the old potter. "Even the river bends for her kindness," added another. One morning, when the drums of the harvest festival echoed again through the village, Mama Cato gathered her strength and called for all the women of Numbala. Word spread quickly. Mothers, wives, daughters, and grandmothers left their homes and came to the open courtyard beneath the great tree. The air buzzed with curiosity as the old woman stood, leaning on her cane, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "I called you here," she began, "not to speak of crops or cattle, but of the sickness of the heart, pride and jealousy." The women murmured, glancing at one another. "I was blind," Mama Cato continued, "blinded by pride so fierce that I could not see the goodness before me. This girl," she pointed to Salima, who stood quietly behind her, "has taught me that strength is not in anger or power, but in patience and love." Her voice cracked as she spoke, her eyes wet with tears she no longer tried to hide. "She cared for me when even the ancestors should have turned away. She fed me when I had starved her of kindness. She called me mother when I did not deserve the name." A hush fell over the women as they listened. Some bowed their heads. Others wiped tears from their eyes. The younger wives glanced at Salima with awe, realizing that gentleness could be as mighty as thunder. Then Mama Cato did something that no one had seen in many years. She knelt before Salima. The village gasped. "Forgive me, my daughter," she whispered. Forgive me for wounding your spirit." Salima, tears glistening on her cheeks, knelt beside her and lifted her up. "You are already forgiven, Mama. The heart that learns humility is the heart that heals." The crowd erupted in song and ululation, the drums thundering with joy. From that day, the story of Salima became a living lesson among the people of Nambala. Mothers told it to their daughters beside the cooking fire. Elders recited it during moonlit gatherings. Even the chief's wife came to seek her counsel, asking, "How did you keep peace when others would have chosen war?" And Salima would smile and answer, "Peace is like a seed, my sister. If you water it with patience, it will grow, even in the hardest soil." Her words echoed across generations, and her home became a place where travelers stopped for wisdom and warmth. Mama Cato, now gentle and humble, would often sit beside her daughter-in-law, smiling softly as the children played. "You see," she would tell them, "this is what true power looks like. Not the kind that commands, but the kind that forgives."